A common situation that completely baffles many PHP beginners is that they're faced with a completely blank screen like this after loading their page into a browser. When I say it's blank, it really is. If I right-click and view page source, there's nothing, absolutely nothing, no HTML, nothing at all. This happens when display errors is turned off in the PHP configuration and there's a problem with the code in the file. It's an issue that many beginners run into if they decide to use their remote server for testing. Many hosting companies turn off display errors as a security measure because error messages can reveal information that could be useful to an attacker. To emulate this situation, I've had to make a little adjustment to my testing environment. So let's go to my editing program, and in the chapter 8.08_02 folder of the exercise files, I've created this file .htaccess, and if we open that, this is for an Apache server and it turns off the display of errors. So if you're using Apache as your testing server, you'll probably see the same effect if you load this file blank.php into a browser. Now, not all Apache servers are configured to support htaccess, so if you don't get a blank page, just sit back and watch the rest of this video. Another scenario is that you get an empty page, but it seems as though there's something there, and there's an example of that here in truncated.php. Let's load that into a browser. And it does seem as though something is going on because the page's background color has been rendered. And if we view page source, we can see that there is actually some HTML in there, but everything comes to a halt after the first div tag. This often happens after you've tested a page carefully in your local testing environment, but it breaks when you upload it to your live website. When faced with either situation, you need to turn on the display of error messages temporarily. You can do that easily by adding a single line of code at the start of the file. So let's go back to the editing program, and then in truncated.php above the doc type, add in a PHP block, and then in there we need to call the ini_set function, and this will set a PHP configuration directive. The first argument, which needs to be a string, is the directive. That's display_errors, and the second argument is a string containing the value 1. And if we copy that little command there and go to blank.php and put it right at the very top, save both of those files, then if we go back to the browser to blank.php, it's still blank. This happens when you've got a syntax error in your code. Even though you've turned on display errors at the beginning of the file, a syntax error anywhere in the file will prevent anything from being displayed. The only solution in this case is to try to fix the syntax error by studying the code or by using a local testing server with display errors turned on. But if we go to the other page, it's this one here, partially rendered page, and reload it in the browser, this time we get some useful error messages. They tell us that require includes menu.php, no such file or directory. Well, if we go back to the editing program, we can see that here we are in truncated.php. We're including menu.php, but we don't even have an includes folder in the exercise files. But if this happens with a file that you've tested locally, it probably means that what has happened is you've forgotten to upload the include file, or that you've stored it in the wrong place. So remember, if you get a blank page or one that's inexplicably truncated, it means that display errors is turned off on your server. This is good for security, but it makes troubleshooting difficult. You can turn on display errors temporarily in a file using ini_set and passing it 2 strings as arguments, display_errors as the first argument and 1 as the second argument, both of them in quotes. If you still get a blank page, it means that you've got an error in your PHP syntax. But if your syntax is okay, you'll get 1 or more error messages that will help you troubleshoot the problem. And when you fix the error, Don't forget to remove the line of code that turns on display errors. Error messages not only look bad in a live website, they also expose information potentially useful to an attacker.